The podcast you're listening to is part of the Second Union Podcast Network. You can listen, like, and subscribe to all our podcasts by heading over to wearesecondunion.com. Thank you for listening.
Welcome to the X-Perts, your exceptional guides to all things X-Men. I am Jeremy.
I'm Joanna.
And I am Jesse.
We are doing the show in conjunction with Second Union. For more of the latest headlines and entertainment, please go to our website at wearesecondunion.com. We had an unintentional break last week, and that was completely my fault. To be honest, I've been dealing with a little exhaustion, and I was overtired. But how are you guys doing?
Doing okay, you know. Life happens.
Yeah, for sure. I'm still getting used to certain aspects of things. There was a recent issue of Marauders that came out where it was revealed that, indeed, the X-Men cannot resurrect Kitty Pryde.
Really?
They've tried twice, and it is not working.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
And is it related to why she can't enter the island?
They haven't had a chance to really dig into that yet, but I can tell you that of all people that are really broken up about it, it's Emma Frost.
I bet.
I can understand that.
So do I, and it also kind of destroys anyone's theory that Frost is somehow responsible for her inability to interact with Krakoa. I mean, if she wasn't worried about it, she just wouldn't be worried about it. But she's taking this all very personally. As a matter of fact, she was so mad about the fallout from it all. She, at least the suspected fallout from it. Well, let me back up. Actually, they already knew that Pryde had been killed. She wasn't aware that Pryde could not be resurrected as of yet. And as part of the payback, she used the Stepford Cuckoos as kind of psychic antennas to reach all the way to Madripoor and give Hominis Verendi, the Kitty Hellfire Club members, a threat in psychic person. And then at the same time, she used her powers to basically expand Pyro's reach so he could play with the flames at the end of the candles and make the kids think they were on fire for a moment. And then
wow.
And then she broke the connection. Those kids were unharmed, but Pyro was just like, oh, I wanted more time to play. No. Message sent.
He's like, aw.
Yeah.
So fun.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, they also managed to trick Yellowjacket and get him off Krakoa and out of Pyro. Remember, he was injected with Yellowjacket as a result of an attack in, issue 6.
Only vaguely.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah, he was supposed to be a spy for Hominis Verendi.
Oh, that's right.
It turns out in Pyro's first stop back at Krakoa, Emma Frost somehow detected that something was wrong in Pyro and just kind of mentally kept him busy, froze him in place at the edge of the island until Bishop could help her figure out what was going on inside of him. And then they played the long game. They actually made Yellowjacket think that he had been somewhat detected, and then he grew his mini sub to full size while it's still inside of Pyro.
Oh boy!
And then then Emma Frost tried to psychically take him over, to which Yellowjacket set his limbs or his exoskeletal legs on automatic mode, and one of the automatic limbs shot Emma Frost between the eyes. And then he really freaked out because he thought, okay, 2 dead mutants are really going to come after me. So he thought he managed to, shrink the sub back down to small size before Bishop could kill him, hit the ocean, and then, was piggybacking on some kind of large fish to get back towards Madripoor. Turns out the whole thing was a double blind. Emma Frost set up an illusion within an illusion to make him think he was getting away, which gave her time to plumb his own mind while he was relaxed, wipe out all of his short-term memory, and send him on his happy way.
Wow.
Not bad, right?
Right.
Yeah.
She won't take all the credit, though. I mean, she was the utensil. It was Bishop's idea.
Sure.
He's a cagey man. I will tell you that we also know that the Black King, Sebastian Shaw, his reach is extending. He has kind of a full court now on the Black faction of the Hellfire Club.
Mm-hmm.
He has his son Shinobi as his Black Knight. And now he also has a pair of rooks named Andrea and Andreas Strucker.
Wow, really?
Yep, apparently the Fenris twins have been resurrected on the island, and they are now working for Shaw.
Oh, didn't realize they were mutants.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they've been mutants since their introduction. And unlike the Gifted TV show, they don't have individual powers. The only time their powers ever work in the comics is when they're in physical contact with each other. And when they do, they can create these kinetic blasts once they are holding hands or touching each other in some way. As far as I know, they've both been dead since the Thunderbolts series. I want to say back in like 2009. But, you know, Krakoa is a forgiving place for all mutants, so yeah. They brought him in.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, the Marauders is developing in an interesting way. The X-Force is dealing with a separate problem in that... I can't remember the name of the... Xeno. Remember the group that was harassing X-Force and Krakoa since the beginning? Bunch of humans, very well organized. Took a large amount of skin and muscle tissue from Domino in the first couple issues.
Oh, yeah.
Turns out they had a purpose for that beyond just getting their forces onto Krakoa. They've been using that tissue so they could mass produce it and graft it onto genetically engineered soldiers, and they were stealing Domino's luck abilities. Domino usually carries a pair of dice that she just kind of tosses around for fun when she's bored. They always come up either 4 or 7, you know, typically winning numbers and craps.
Yeah.
However, not long after she was rescued from Xeno, she was tossing dice, and they were always coming up snake eyes.
Oh, no.
So there was an assassin that was killing people associated with Krakoa. Not mutants, but just like allies off the island. And they were incredibly lucky shots, so Domino went to hunt this person down. And when she finally found them, not only was it a genetically created soldier, but it was one that looked like a photo negative of Domino. Black skin, white hair, white single eye on the left.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and Domino and Colossus managed to track this person down and stop them. Then they found an entire train full of them.
Oh, no.
Yeah. They managed to stop the train, and I mean that quite literally, because Domino kept them busy inside while Colossus hopped outside and stopped the engine with his bare hands.
Of course he could do that.
Yeah, it was enough concussive force that Domino did not survive the encounter, but of course, mutant resurrection protocols, it's not as bad as it sounds.
Yep.
Still, though, that's a pretty dangerous thing if they can mass produce that. So, a lot to discover there. But we're not talking about Domino, but we are talking about another member of X-Force right now. His name is Quentin Quire. His code name is Kid Omega, although he rarely ever uses it. It seems like he's very satisfied to let everyone know who he is.
Mm-hmm.
This is a
ego.
This is a character who just does not care. Well, he cares what people think about him, but he's not really interested in keeping a lot of secrets. And this is a character that has had a surprising amount of use since his creation. He first appeared in New X-Men number 134 back in January of 2003. Compared to a lot of characters, he's very new. His first appearance was as Kid Omega, and it was also the first appearance of a group of mutants that were following him in the Xavier Academy, known as the Omega Gang. Quentin Quire joined the student body of the Xavier Institute after Professor X, came back from averting a war with Genosha, which at this time was being run by Magneto. The X-Mansion had been rebuilt, the school was open for business, and Quentin stands out as a high intellect. He's a very smart man, and he becomes one of Xavier's prized pupils, if not the prized pupil. Quire is very quickly revealed to be an extreme-level telepath and telekinetic. And when I say extreme, I wouldn't say he rivals Jean Grey, but if he gets some experience under his belt, he could definitely give her a run for her money.
Mm-hmm.
The Stepford Cuckoos describe Quire as having a see-through mind, but he's not supposedly limited to that. I don't know if that means his power just glows in their eyes, or if he's just so naked about what he wants from people. Quentin often hangs out with another character known as Glob Herman, and has a crush on one of the Stepford Cuckoos, Sophie. There is something about Quire that generally disturbs the Cuckoos, although Emma Frost thinks it's just an academic rivalry. Now, while Quire is at Xavier, he invents anti-gravity floats for Martha Johnson's brain canister. She's also known as No Girl in the comics. She's a living brain in a jar. She was a testing subject by humans that the X-Men rescued.
Yikes.
He also exposed a charisma-powered character Slick's true ugly body to students. During his birthday, Quentin receives a call from his parents who tell him he was adopted.
He probably said, cool.
No, actually, he had a breakdown.
Huh.
He went to town, got himself a haircut reminiscent of Bolivar Trask's depiction of a mutant in propaganda from a newspaper that was made on the day Quentin Quire was born. Then he becomes opposed to a policy of tolerance with humans. He just wants nothing to do with them, period. He wants vengeance for a recently murdered mutant fashion designer known as Jumbo Carnation. He goes to wearing clothes based on the mutant illustration in Trask propaganda, which also happens to be one of Jumbo Carnation's creations. And then he debates with Professor X about the merits of the professor's dream for mutant-human equality and mutants living in peace, whereas he also questions why Xavier would allow any dream other than his own to exist. In other words, Quire's okay with just eliminating anyone that doesn't think the same way. After that, Quire and a group of mutants who share his ideology visit town wearing the Trask Overlord clothes, and Quire convinces him to take a mutant-derived drug known as Kick. It is somewhat addictive and allows a temporary boost in mutant powers. Then, the new Omega Gang fights a group of human gang members in an alley and maims and or kills all of them. Glob Herman asks what happened to a human Quentin himself had murdered. Quire replies that he carved his name across the man's mind.
Oh, wow.
Xavier confronts the students, but Quire is not implicated somehow. Quire and his gang then go to a mutant tattooist and have their arms marked with an Omega symbol over an X, which becomes the trademark symbol of the Omega Gang. Then, the Omega Gang attacks U-Men Central. The U-Men are a group of humans who want to gain powers by capturing mutants and cutting out whatever parts of their biology generate their abilities to have them grafted into themselves.
Oh, that's disgusting.
It is.
And that's not how any of this works.
Not generally, but some of the U-Men successfully do gain powers this way. After returning to the school, the Omega Gang ambushes Professor X with a baseball bat, clamps his head in a thought-proof helmet. Then, at the school's open day to parents and the media, Quentin Quire publicly proclaims its open season on humans and starts a rather notable event in X-Men history known as the Riot at Xavier's. He literally starts a riot within the grounds of a school. Some students join in Quire's protesting and are anti-Xavier, but most of the damage is done by the Omega Gang themselves. However, the Omega Gang is not really a match when the teachers get involved. Beast, Cyclops, Emma Frost, and Zorn counter the Omega Gang.
But Zorn's in here.
Yeah, but Quire is still guarding Professor X. So the situation threatens to continue, since they can't get to Quire. Quire actually subdues Wolverine. He somehow gets into Wolverine's head with a memory of one of his past lives.
Oh, he's fighting dirty.
Yeah. Xavier frees himself from the helmet and confronts Quentin, and calls his thought-proof helmet and his plans of revolution flimsy. However, the whole thing isn't officially ended until the Stepford Cuckoos, led by Sophie herself, use the Cerebra helmet and a dose of the Kick drug to boost their powers. They use Cerebro to blast through the grounds and confront Quire, who admits that his motivation for starting the riot was just to impress Sophie, because he's attracted to her. This causes all the Cuckoos to actually join in a thought of how disgusted they are by this idea. They mock his motivations, and then they hit him with a telepathic shockwave. And while he's disoriented, Quire does something he's not generally known to do. He apologizes.
Wait,
Really?
Hold on, back up. He did what?
He actually said he was sorry. He did all this to impress Sophie, but also because of his own disruptive sense of identity after his adopted parents told him he was adopted.
So basically, he just threw a fit.
He did. Unfortunately, Emma Frost is now the one chastising him because the cost of taking the Kick and using Cerebra overcame Sophie.
Oh.
As a result, she passed away. Once he discovered Sophie was dead, and Quire overcharged. He overloaded his own abilities, and he went catatonic. Quire was then taken to the school infirmary where Beast tries to stabilize him, but his own body is being burned out by the psionic energy he's generating. Basically, Quire's powers are threatening to eat himself.
Huh.
This is the result of his own mental instability as well as, the regular overdoses of kick he's been taking. And it's causing a weird secondary mutation in Quire's body that's causing his brain to mutate into faster-than-light energy. I'm not quite sure how that works.
Yeah.
But this puts him with This puts Quire in telepathic contact with everyone on the planet across time. That has to be an insane amount of voices in your head.
Seriously.
It's at this point that Professor X calls for Zorn, who opens his helmet to expose Quire to the mini-star within his own mind. And it's at this point that Quire evidently left the mortal plane, as one of the characters put it. Quire's final words as Zorn heals him are prophetic of a lot of the coming events in Morrison's last run of New X-Men. It includes foreshadowing of events such as Zorn's true identity, the destruction of Manhattan, the actions of the sentient mold Sublime, and Professor X resigning as headmaster, leaving Jean Grey to run the school. It's not a spoiler at this point, but Zorn is actually Magneto.
Yeah.
It's Magneto in disguise. He's been running a bit of a subversive plan within the student body during this period. While Quire does go catatonic for a while, he's not truly dead. Although Professor X announces to the student body that he believes Quire has ascended to a higher plane of existence. It's his way of trying to diffuse the rabble-rousing that Quire has seeded through the student body. Meanwhile, Quire remains in a semi-alive dormant energy form in a containment unit on Beast's lab table. Meanwhile, a potential future is shown in a new X-Men story called Here Comes Tomorrow, and it's indicated that eventually Quentin Quire may become the host of the Phoenix Force.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he's wearing a Phoenix costume, and it even has Quentin's usual pink haircut. And he tells Jean Grey, who vaguely recognizes him, that she doesn't have long to set the events in the timeline right. Not long after this is when Jean Grey dies in the comic books. Months later, in the miniseries Phoenix Endsong, a fragment of the Shattered Phoenix Force returns to Earth, and it senses Quentin Quire in his semi-catatonic state, thinking this might be Jean Grey. How wrong you were.
Is it... I back up just... Jean Grey died the last time?
Jean Grey dies at the end of the new X-Men series.
Okay, just because I thought she...
this wasn't the Phoenix Force retcon where the Phoenix was pretending to be Jean Grey, died on her behalf, and she was in a pod at the bottom of, I think, New York Harbor.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, which time?
Yeah,
Gotcha.
This is Jean herself dying as a result of trying to stop Magneto from ruling New York. So, the Phoenix Force finds Quire, and it manages to shock him out of his catatonic state back to consciousness and helps reconstitute his body. But it's trying to find something in particular, and it thinks Quire can lead him to it. To which Quire convinces this section of the Phoenix Force to seek out Sophie's corpse. Remember the girl he was interested in, the one that died trying to stop him? But he's unable to finish the process with this small section of the Phoenix Force, so he's seeking out the rest so he can hopefully resurrect Sophie. Now, Quentin finds the Phoenix Force, which has resurrected itself around the idea that it's going to bring back Jean Grey, so that it can somehow force Jean Grey and Cyclops back together, so it can feed off Cyclops' energy blasts, his optic blasts. Okay, here's the thing: the Phoenix Force was unaware that Jean Grey was not only dead, but Cyclops had moved on. At this point, Cyclops is in a very deep relationship with Emma Frost.
Yeah, Cyclops moves on before she's actually dead, too, but we're not going to go there, are we?
Well, they were getting divorced, and it was just kind of unfortunate timing that she died when she did.
I meant the other times he cheated on her.
You know what? I'm still surprised so many people are just like, Scott and Jean forever. It's like, even they don't think it's forever, dude.
They were horrible together.
No, Scott and Emma were a much more interesting combination to me.
I don't like Scott with anybody. he deserves to die alone. But anyway.
Well, here's the thing. The Phoenix Force traps both Cyclops and Emma Frost in some kind of weird containment vessel. Quire wants the Phoenix Force so he can resurrect Sophie so bad that he breaks the containment vessel, releasing the Phoenix Fragment. Then he gets the Phoenix Force to resurrect Sophie, which it does.
Mm-hmm.
And when Quire professes his love and what he did to bring Sophie back, Sophie is still disgusted by what he did at the right of Xavier's, and actually chose to stay dead instead of spending time with him.
Wow.
Ooh, that is like worse than friend zoning. No, I will dead zone. I'd rather be dead than be with you.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah,
That's a little harsh.
After that, the Phoenix Force section basically said, okay, so you don't have what I need, and left him to his, air quotes, sickness.
Wow.
So after this whole thing is over, Quire then does the impossible again. He apologizes to the X-Men, and he's also expended so much energy trying to track down this Phoenix Force segment that he really just doesn't have the energy to fight.
Mm-hmm.
And he returns to his non-corporeal state in Beast Lab. He's really having a bad time.
Just needs a nap.
Yeah. The next time Quentin Quire is used is during the Nation X time. His containment vessel is brought to Utopia in the San Francisco Bay after the X-Mansion is abandoned. And Quentin suddenly brings himself back to his body because he discovered that the higher plane he was on was boring. And he decides to become a villain.
I was bored on the higher plane of existence. Let's be bad guys.
Pretty much. He starts to develop secret plans to destroy Utopia, and he thinks that the X-Men stole his idea to create a mutant nation. He wants to make the whole thing a game, and he selects the Martha, the girl we talked about who's just a brain in a jar, to be his nemesis. Gives her 7.5 minutes to stop him. Martha attempts to alert the X-Men, but again, she's a telepathic brain in a jar. And he intercepts her and taunts her at each attempt she tries to contact the X-Men, telepathically. He then smashes her container and leaves her to die.
Jeez.
That's when Martha realizes that Quentin has infiltrated Cerebra in order to destroy the island and take revenge on all the Stepford Cuckoos by putting them in an eternal mental loop. Martha breaks
Groundhog Day?
Yeah, but I mean, these are the sisters of the woman who he loved, and he's just really out to get them.
Mm-hmm.
However, Martha's powers are enough to break the loop, and they manage to not only save Martha, but they help her defeat Quentin Quire, which is... that's got to start getting on your nerves after a while.
Yeah.
Quentin was put in an X-Men prison by then. There is a small prison facility at the bottom of the Utopia Island. But he's broken out by Cade Kilgore. You guys know who that is?
No.
Cade Kilgore sounds very, very familiar, and I just can't put my finger on it.
That's a name we've actually read recently in Marauders. He is one of the kids who becomes the new Hellfire Club.
Okay.
Oh.
The ones running Ominous Verendi right now.
Gotcha.
And he breaks Quentin Quire out of the X-Men's prison to be a member of the new Hellfire Club.
Yeah, because what could go wrong?
Meanwhile, Quire doesn't know that somebody broke him out. Quire just thinks his containment unit malfunctioned, and he's going to celebrate his new freedom by going to an international arms conference in Switzerland.
Oh, no.
Where Cyclops was supposed to be giving a talk.
Oh, this is bad.
And he wants to force the top leaders of the world to reveal their darkest secrets on camera to the world. Which he succeeds in, and after that he becomes the most hunted mutant on Earth, and that's when Quentin Quire sought refuge on Utopia.
So let me get this straight. He flexes his muscles.
Yep.
Pisses everybody off.
Yep.
And then runs with his tail tucked.
Oh, yeah.
Does he at least get his tail in beaten soundly?
Well, Wolverine wants to give Quentin Quire over to Steve Rogers, like right now.
Yeah.
Cyclops decides to go the other way and put him back in prison. He wants Quentin Quire basically to be tried by a jury of his peers.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of this event, Quentin Quire is now considered to be one of the world's worst terrorists.
Wouldn't you?
Yeah, but believe it or not, Wolverine actually intercedes on his behalf when it comes to this status. He goes to Captain America and strikes a deal. During the Schism event, basically Wolverine and Cyclops argued over how mutant kind is supposed to go forward. Wolverine went back to New York and reopened the Xavier Institute under the name the Jean Grey School, And the deal he cut with Captain America was that Quentin Quire is now immediately enrolled in the Jean Grey school. Wolverine will be watching over him.
I mean, the worst things could happen, but
Yeah, I mean, supposedly nobody asked Cyclops what he thought about the issue, but I'm sure at this point, with mutants being split the way they were, Cyclops was probably just like, hey, you want to watch him? You watch him.
You want to be the babysitter? You go.
Yeah. Quire then reappears in issue 3 of Wolverine and the X-Men, where he helps Wolverine's team by reasoning with an offshoot of Krakoa, which they later call Kid Krakoa. This is not the island that you see now. This island is like the mature version of Krakoa. This offshoot was actually incorporated into the grounds underneath the Jean Grey school. So they have a living defense network, basically, underneath them.
Interesting.
So, after that, the school is actually running short of funds. I mean, I don't think Wolverine knew what it would take to run an institute like that.
I don't know why he would volunteer to be in charge of that. He doesn't like kids, and he doesn't like much responsibility.
That's kind of funny you put it that way, because it was actually Quire that helped him get the funds to continue running the school. He helped Wolverine con a space casino out of their chips.
I was just imagining, like, Wolverine doing a bake sale with a flowered apron to raise money for this school.
The thing is, though, not only is it weird to bring a minor to a casino, let alone a space casino, but this is where Quentin Quire learns one of his signature techniques. During the fight to defend themselves while they're trying to get away with the money, Quentin Quire reasons that if a mid-level telepath like Psylocke can create a psychic sword, why can't a high-level telepath like Quentin Quire create a psychic shotgun?
Of course.
And that's exactly what he does. After this whole debacle, Quire faces off against Wolverine in a mental construct in an attempt to show Wolverine who is tougher and to punish Wolverine in general. Unfortunately, this event also brings in a student who has a high moral compass, and that is Armor. Hisako. Trying to keep control of both Wolverine and Armor is a bit too much, and he finds the effort very taxing. However, he decided to leave Wolverine with a present. He basically took away a lot of his reason and left him a beastly raging nightmare.
Oh, no.
Took away all of his control impulses. There's a problem with that, though. Because the beast that is left behind is hell-bent on killing Quentin Quire for some unknown reason.
Because it seems to me like he's cocky and would get on his nerves really fast.
Yeah, it's just one of those miscalculations. Let's see what happens if I take away his impulse control. Oh god, mistakes were made!
Who's controlling him? Nobody. Not even himself. Uh-oh.
Might want to put that back.
But after this period, Quire begins to do something else he's not used to doing, and that's accepting his fellow students. He helps the faculty after Frankenstein's circus hypnotizing them to fight the student body. He helps work as part of a team during a field trip to the Savage Land, where Wolverine's half-brother Dog makes an unexpected appearance.
I'm sorry, hold on. The phrase,
What?
a field trip to Savage Land, just doesn't compute.
They're mutants. If you're going to keep them entertained, you got to take them somewhere weird.
But
I was
you
more
could go to,
impressed-
like, Space Casino.
Okay, this is Wolverine we're talking about, and his version of relaxation is very different from your average human beings.
That's fair. Yeah.
I'm surprised Dog is still alive.
Oh,
Well, I guess I shouldn't be. I'm surprised the dog that's been mentioned again outside the origin story.
Well, Dog actually played a rather significant part in Wolverine and the X-Men, because it turns out he was one of the physical trainers of the new Hellions Academy being run by the new Hellfire Club.
Huh.
So this was kind of his way of poking directly at Wolverine and the students. He didn't necessarily want to kill any of them. He just kind of wanted to take their measure, so he could take that back and train his own students better. But at the same time, the surprises for Quire don't end there. In the AVX miniseries, he actually had to assist one person that doesn't like him at all. Captain America. I know, you're asking yourself, what can make Captain America want to work with somebody he recognizes as a terrorist? Well, you either get to fight Quentin Quire, or you get to fight that army of MODOK clones.
Oh.
Ah. Lesser of two evils, huh?
Pretty
Tough
much.
choice.
Yeah.
Let me flip a coin real quick.
Yep. Quire did manage to distinguish himself to Wolverine, though. Logan tapped him as one of the students to represent the Jean Grey School in a competition among schools for super youngsters. It was called the Contest of Champions. But before it really gets heavily started, the whole thing is attacked by an alien armada. Quire actually witnessed other students being flattened next to him.
Huh.
But Quire's telepathy is essential in networking the students to fight well enough against the aliens to push them back. After this, several members of the Jean Grey School, students I should say, decide to join the new Hellfire Academy, and Quentin Quire went with them. Not because he was terribly interested in being a villain at this point. He just wanted to know why the girl he was interested in, Idie Okawanko, decided to switch sides. And after he gained entrance to the Hellfire Academy, he just kept looking for Idie. This led to Quentin getting detention. What detention means in the Hellfire Academy is beaten until he submits. Surprisingly, though, the person that helped him escape was the school janitor, Toad. While he was escaping, Quentin and Toad were confronted by other students of the Academy, and with EDA and Wolverine's X-Men team, they beat back the Hellfire Academy and returned to the school. After that, Quentin actually graduates the Jean Grey Academy and becomes a student assistant in the school. Then he starts to question his decision to stay once the Battle of the Atom storyline occurs and he gets to meet his future self, the host of the Phoenix Force. I guess it's at that point you're wondering, geez, why am I here if that's going to happen to me? Not long after this, Quire breaks all associations with the X-Men and the faculty, and he becomes independently wealthy somehow. Then he decides to quit the school to join the Phoenix Corporation and becomes the new White King of the Hellfire Club. Unfortunately, he's not really able to get into the throes of enjoying himself because he also had another time travel adventure where he saw his own death in the future. Leaves him in a bit of a depression spiral. Wolverine and Iron Man try to bring Quire out of his isolation, but they fail. The thing that actually causes Quire to start to poke around the X-Men's world again is when Wolverine died. He also helped the Avengers and the X-Men battle the Red Onslaught, the Red Skull with Professor X's powers. So Quire was offline for a significant amount of time. Then he reappeared after Kitty Pryde relocated the X-Men school to Central Park, New York. She also changed the name of the school back to the Xavier Institute, but now it's somewhat different. It's not for higher learning. It's the Xavier Institute for Mutant Education and Outreach. Quentin decided, okay, now's the time. I'll be an X-Man. And Pryde looks at him and basically says, no.
Good for her.
Yeah, it's not because he isn't powerful. It's not because he isn't trained. It's because Pryde determines that he's one of the X-Men that is not combat ready simply because of his attitude.
You think?
So he's put on an X-Men training squad, a squad specifically meant for students who are not combat ready, either by power, training, or attitude. And this is the new version of Generation X. And it's actually being run by one of the original members of Generation X, Jubilee, who is a vampire at this point, if you recall.
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
Other mutants on this squad are Nathaniel Carver, Benjamin Deeds, Lynn Lee, who's known as Nature Girl, Bling, and Eye-Boy. Eye-Boy always freaks me out because while his powers are not offensive, they're highly useful. I don't know. I guess it's just me.
I'm not as familiar with him, so I couldn't say.
Okay. Well, I mean, Generation X is supposed to be kept out of harm's way, but of course, they're mutant teens. So when there's a shadow creature in Central Park stealing mutants in the middle of the night, Quentin convinces the other members of Generation X to check it out. Turns out this shadow is way more dangerous than they anticipated. Do you know who M-Plate is?
Not ringing a bell.
Okay, M-Plate is the brother of Monet St. Croix.
Okay.
He is a mutant who has to feed off the marrows of other mutants to sustain himself.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, him.
Yeah, he has an armored carapace-like skin, long tendrils for hair, and he has a pair of these weird gaping maws in his palms, which he uses to clamp down on mutants and start to steal their marrow. But there's a two-sided problem to this, because it is M-Plate attacking them, but it's not M-Plate in M-Plate's body. M-Plate is possessing his sister Monet at this point.
Oh boy.
Oh no.
So add those powers onto M-Plate's abilities and drives.
Yikes.
Yes. So they've managed to deal with that, and after defeating something called the Rat King, Quentin convinces two of the other male members of Generation X, Benjamin and Nathaniel, to join him for a night out. They got stuck in a villain auction. And they figured out that they had to destroy something before it was auctioned off. And you're not going to believe who the auctioneer was.
Oh boy. Who?
Cade Kilgore. All comes around, doesn't it?
Yep.
So, after this, Quentin becomes kind of fed up with people. They never seem to do what he needs them to do. So he tries to exile himself from society and live in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean with Kid Krakoa taking the shape of a small desert island.
Uh-huh.
Quentin, unfortunately, will not be left alone because he is suddenly met by Thor.
Okay.
No, it's not okay, because it's not the Thor he recognizes.
Oh, Jane Foster?
Yeah, it's a tall blonde woman with a hammer. He doesn't get this.
I was just wondering which Thor.
Yeah. Apparently, Thor had been directed by Kid Gladiator from the Shi'ar Empire, who knows Quentin Quire, and Warbird, who is Kid Gladiator's bodyguard, to help with a conflict because the Shi'ar seem to have escalated something to a cosmic scale, as she puts it.
Uh-oh.
And Thor was being forced to fight against the Shi'ari gods, Kithri and Shara. You want to know why she has to fight them?
Tell me.
They don't believe she's a god. They don't recognize this Thor either.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and, she summons Quire because Kid Gladiator says he can help, which he does in his very Quentin Quire ways.
Mm-hmm.
And they do manage to defeat Kithri and Shara. Except Kithri and Shara decide to... They don't take the defeat gracefully. They decide to throw a tantrum. It just turns out that their version of a tantrum has a name, and it's been seen several times. Kithri and Shara, when they join their energies, create the Phoenix Force.
Oh, snap.
And since they lost this contest, they have summoned the Phoenix Force to lay waste to all of reality.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah. But Quire's own abilities, channeled against the Phoenix, give Thor the opening she needs to access the White Hot Room. Think of it as a way station, or almost like the central point of the Phoenix, where the spirit of its host reside, as well as the lone point where you might be able to interact with the Phoenix Force itself, which Thor does.
So she punched it really hard.
Yeah, it was a disagreement that got physical.
Of course.
But eventually Thor was able to negotiate the Phoenix down. However, the Phoenix didn't want to just leave reality. The Phoenix likes reality. The only time it's ever summoned, though, is when its gods have a hissy fit. So, between Thor, Quire, and the Phoenix, a deal is made. The Phoenix will discorporate, except for a small section that has to be carried around in Quentin.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Shira and Kithri are arrested by basically, in simple terms, God Police. And they're taken to a plain known as Omnipotent City to defend themselves for their actions. And the Shi'ar are left without gods. Except, no, they're not. They now have a Phoenix-powered Quentin to worship.
Oh, no. His
no.
ego does not need that boost.
Oh, yeah. He became the new god of the Shi'ar.
Gag.
How long did that last?
Not long, because the next time anyone finds Quentin, he's back on his island in self-imposed exile.
Did he explain why he's back there and not being a god?
I'm guessing he demanded Xboxes until they threw him out. I don't know. But Quire actually gave up his section of the Phoenix Force towards the end of the Generation X series when the series was canceled and they were trying to write significant endings for any characters they plan on reusing. Mm-hmm. Quire was pragmatic. At the end of it, he used the section of the Phoenix Force he had with him and used all of it to fix Jubilee's genealogy. She regained her original powers and all the vampirism was expelled from her.
Oh, wow.
That's handy.
A rare piece of absolute altruism, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Very rare.
But after that, Quentin Quire became a West Coast Avenger, and we saw how that went. I mean, look, he was a central member of it. He helped them get funded by bringing that reality show. I'd like to say the worst decision he made was just like making all these deals without asking Kate Bishop, but I really think the worst decision he made was to get involved with Gwenpool. He has a thing for blondes and strong women. I will admit that. Because every woman he chases is a big challenge for him.
Yeah.
But now we know he's currently, I don't want to say a founding member, just kind of a coincidental member of the current version of X-Force, which is now functioning as Krakoa's version of the CIA. It's not a bad role for him because it's challenging. He's highly ambitious and intelligent. He's probably the kind of guy you want chasing down information. And unlike some of the characters, he's pretty dual purpose, because if he feels like throwing down, he can certainly throw down.
I find it difficult that he would agree to be in a position, in an authoritative position.
Well, he wasn't in an authoritative position. When I say he was coincidentally a member of X-Force, nobody asked him to do anything. Remember the first issue was when Xavier was assassinated?
Mm-hmm.
So Wolverine went out to find information as to where the plane came from that these people jumped off of to get on Krakoa. He went to find the aeronautical information. When he got there, the tech tried to fight back, basically, and Wolverine was trying to talk him out of it because he knew he was going to hurt this guy to stop him. The guy suddenly collapsed in a heap, and when Wolverine looked up, Quentin Quire was already in the man's chair, typing away. I mean, he was just driven enough because somebody attacked mutants to go find out what happened. Nobody asked him to, he just decided to do it. And I'd like to say that's a nice thing, except it's still Quentin Quire. I'm sure part of him just said, I can get back at these guys for Xavier. Hey, I get to fight something. You know, he was well positioned to be a member of the team, and I think a lot of people leaned into it. You can tell this guy no, but he's just going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
So, how much do you think you learned about Kid Omega here?
I mean, everything, because I didn't really know much about him.
I knew he was a bit of an arrogant, insert word here.
A bit?
But, a bit, but I didn't realize how bad, but I think the best part of it, he always got his comeuppance in the end. And I think that's what...
He is a rare character, though. I mean, we're talking about a telepath and telekinetic who almost, from the beginning, or at the very least since his body was reincorporated after Phoenix Endsong, he seems to be able to stand toe-to-toe with characters like Rachel Summers and Psylocke and even Hope Summers when it comes to telepathic and telekinetic ability. So it's really strange for a character to become that powerful, that fast.
But that lends to his ego being that big.
It does. And unfortunately, it's one of those things that's going to happen when a kid has tremendous power. He's going to stand head and shoulders above the rest, not because it's a good or a bad thing, simply because he can. And as we've discovered, he does have some very early trauma that's difficult to get over. I didn't know why he was as arrogant as he was, but I mean, part of that is a power. The other part is everybody's just basically pushed this guy to the side, all the way up to his adopted parents. How would you feel when you call up your parents from boarding school and say, yeah, it's my birthday, how are you doing? You're adopted. Click.
I mean, I wouldn't go off the deep end and be crazy like he was, but...
It's hard to say. We don't have the same abilities. I don't know what I would have done if I was a telekinetic or telepath like that and somebody decided to rock my world that hard.
Honestly, it's all the ego, and he just can't handle it.
Yeah. At
the
same time, though, there's a small part of me that kind of claps because he has that much power, and hey, New York was still standing after that.
Was it, though?
He only bothered, like, gang members. He had a rebellious phase that unfortunately was augmented by his abilities, I think.
And his ego.
Yeah. He seems to have it relatively under control. His ego is still there. He still thinks of himself as the cock of the walk, but he is still working with other people at this point.
Mm-hmm. Which
is a big victory in and of itself. Wolverine should actually be proud. This one did not destroy anything.
And he actually apologized, twice? And was altruistic, once?
Yeah. He's shown he has empathy. He's like a lot of young men. He doesn't know how to show it.
or exercise it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but he has the capability to be amazing. It's just going to be interesting if any writers can take him beyond the idea of egotistical little butthead.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be an interesting story when he actually finally calms down.
I think it's funny that Wolverine was the one that tempered him. Like, he was the one that was like, all right, look, kid, we're doing this thing. And he was the one that kind of mentored him in such a way that wasn't unlike Wolverine, but he's just stubborn enough to deal with this cocky little kid.
Yeah,
you know?
The other problem is there's very few characters that he can relate to, because most of the other kids that have known the X-Men have either been... They haven't been members of the main team for the most part. You know, there's characters like Cannonball that were parts of the X-Men, but didn't really stick around. And then there's characters like Kitty Pryde, who probably has the experience and the life experience to be able to teach him what to do with himself, except she was either busy as headmaster of the Jean Grey School, or at the Xavier Institute, whatever you want to call it, or she's a drunken pirate. She hasn't really had time to teach him anything.
I like the pirate phase.
The only other person that may have the amount of experience is Jubilee, but she hasn't quite had the same, I guess you could say, control issues with her abilities that Quire has had. Outside that, all the others are basically kids. They've never stepped as high as he has. It's got to be frustrating to be almost as good as the X-Men, but definitely much better than most of the students. That does put him into a strange social class all of his own. It's like the only one that might be able to match him as far as hellacious life experience and power problems would be Magic, but I have a feeling that she would break him entirely if she tried to teach him anything.
Oh, probably.
You know, the last person she tried to teach was poor Noel, who she threw into limbo for 3 months.
Oops.
Oh no, that wasn't oops. That was stop complaining about growing food. Or.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I say it facetiously. Oops.
But I do feel like I understand him a bit better now. I like this.
Yeah.
He's just a frustrated kid with extreme intellect and power that he doesn't know what to do with.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. If there was ever a kid that needed a fidget spinner.
He would need like some sort of intergalactic high-speed turbo fidget spinner of doom with like the lights on it.
So that's what happened to Herbie from the Fantastic Four.
Honestly, I was like, how far has he stretched out his powers? Is he capable of just grabbing the movie and shifting it half a degree?
I don't know. How far can you reach when you're a Phoenix-empowered telepath?
The answer is yes.
The big problem is someone not giving him the idea.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. Don't feed the curiosity, please. Please.
Well, I'm willing to open up the room. Are there any X characters or mutants that you're interested in learning about? It's a wide question, I know.
It is.
Yeah, there's so many.
No, I like to think we've been picking unusual ones lately. We've been staying out of the general dozen that most people know to really delve into unusual characters.
Yeah, but I like pulling these ones out of the shadows and giving them, 5 minutes of limelight for once. Dusting them off a little bit.
Yeah, true enough.
Have we... Well...
What?
She's not a X-Men.
How would you like to talk about an X-Men support character?
Okay. Who you got in mind?
Oh, it just occurred to me that there's an unusual one that probably doesn't get enough love simply because he has an unusual ability. He's never been an X-Man, but he has been a superhero.
Okay, who?
Do you know the name Madison Jeffries?
Yes.
No.
Madison Jeffries was an Alpha Flight.
Uh-huh.
He was known as Box for a little while. He has the ability to control metal, very fundamentally. And what happened was there was a guy who created the Box exosuit. It was a robot that somebody could merge completely with and, act as an independent body. Once the owner of it died, Madison Jeffries took over the box robot, but because of his metal shifting abilities, think of it like a robot version of Metamorpho. He could change his arms and legs into just about anything needed.
Interesting.
And then Alpha Flight eventually broke down. He found a place with the X-Men for a while. He's always been on support, never been in combat because of a combination of mental difficulties and having an ability that, while it's useful, is not exactly frontline stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You interested?
Sure.
All right. So next week we'll actually get into a Canadian character that isn't named Logan. That'll be fun.
Canadian, eh?
Yes, he is. Alpha Flight's all Canadians.
Yeah, I know.
Facetious. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you've learned something. I know we have. And next week it'll be Madison Jeffries. Thank you very much. I am Jeremy.
I'm Joanna.
I'm Jesse.
And you have just been expertly informed.
This podcast is part of the Second Union Podcast Network. You can listen, like, and subscribe to all our podcasts by heading over to wearesecondunion.com. Thank you for listening.